tonight from 8, 5 Live.
Sheikh Hamza Yusuf is my guest this morning. So many calls, so if you can try and keep your questions brief, we would appreciate it. Mohammed in Birmingham. Very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Fee. Good morning, Sheikh Hamza.
Good morning.
Alaikum salam. I just want to ask a question, please. It's to do with the fact that you've been on record saying that Muslims should revive the intellectual tradition, especially the classical heritage of jurisprudence.
Right.
And many people have actually started doing that because of your advice. But what they find is that once they start studying the books and the scholars that are recommended traditionally to try to get a traditional understanding, the teaching that they find is a teaching which is currently condemned as being extremist and fundamentalist. I myself try to study Hanafi fiqh, and especially about jihad. And the very first line I ever read of a classical text of Islamic jurisprudence on jihad is that jihad is obligatory on the Muslims, regardless of whether non-Muslims attack us or do not attack us. And this is currently being taught in Islamic seminaries throughout the Muslim world by traditional scholars. And I find, for instance, that what you are saying currently, especially just what you have said recently, doesn't seem to gel with what you were saying previously. And I honestly find that there is some sort of disingenuity here, because if we are to discover our heritage has aspects which are not compatible with Western civilization. And I just want to bring one point up. You brought up
I'll tell you what, Mohammed, let's just hear the answer to that.
First of all, I would say that jihad is an obligation binding upon Muslims, which is defense of the homelands. It's also the removal of aggression. But the normative practice of the Muslims has always been that aggression is prohibited. The Quran is very clear on that. La ta'tadu, don't be aggressive in your wars. The Quran says if they incline towards peace, then you too should incline towards peace. The Quran permits, and certainly in traditional jurisprudence, the treaties with non-Muslim nations, and those treaties are to be honored. You will find differing views, there is no doubt, because like I said earlier, Islam is not theocratic in we know exactly what God meant, but it's human attempts at understanding what God means. And that is why, first of all, most of those laws that deal with international relations, that deal with these, have nothing to do with your average Muslims. And when your average Muslims begin to take it upon themselves to implement laws that have to do with state polity and state power, this is where the confusion comes in. It's none of the average Muslim's business to be attempting to apply laws that are directed to the rulers of a country. And this is what's known in the Islamic tradition as fard ayn and fard kifaya. And ayn, everybody has to do, like praying 5 times a day, paying zakat, these things. Kifaya, only those people that need to do it. The other people don't do it. And certainly in rules relating to government, that has nothing to do with the common people.
But I can see where the confusion would lie, though. I mean, if you're advocating that people do read these texts...
No, but if they read them without qualified teachers, absolutely, you're going to have serious problems. You can't just pick up a book and read... Look, in England, no one will allow a barrister who has not been trained in law school to go out and practice law. And constitutional law is certainly... You have to know interpretive practices, hermeneutics. You have to learn how to derive principles. I mean, if we had people reading a book on surgery and going out and performing surgery on people out in the society, it's madness. And so, this idea that I can pick up my book and become a weekend mufti is absolute insanity.
The GMC is very busy dealing with some of those cases to do with medicine at the moment. Mohammed,
can I just come back to one point, please?
Of course you can, and then I want to ask you a question myself.
Okay, the point being, what I'm trying to say, for instance, you mentioned the Taliban themselves. The thing about the Taliban is that they were a government. They were Taliban, which means students. They didn't pick up books and just apply Islamic law. They were advised by Islamic scholars of a certain tradition in Pakistan, the Deobandi school. They themselves had scholars, and they interpreted their understanding of Islam and applied it on their nation, and that was condemned by the rest of the world. Yet from their perspective, they were implementing Islamic law through qualified opinion, and their interpretation has been accepted by a lot of Muslims in the world. And it's an interpretation, and if they are condemned, you're forcing people who accept that interpretation into an extremist camp. And who decides ultimately?
Do you feel, Mohammed, that you are either tempted or you feel obliged to follow a jihad because of what you've read and because of what you believe you've been told?
No, what I want to do is I want to understand my Islamic heritage and learn from traditional scholars about Islam. Exactly what Sheikh Hamza wishes Muslims to do. Unfortunately, my scholars are the same scholars who learnt with the Taliban. And it cannot be said that the scholars, say, in Mauritania or in Egypt, who have a more liberal understanding, are better Islamic scholars than the scholars that the Taliban have studied under. But they are both follow a tradition. Now, I want to study Islam, and then I want Muslims to implement that in their lives. They shouldn't force it amongst other people, but then they shouldn't be condemned by people for implementing, which is traditional Islam, and then said, oh, these are fundamentalists. I mean, we have certain penal laws in Islam, we have other laws, but we will always be condemned for applying our laws. This is a fact.
First of all, I mean, just in penal punishments, there's 6 penal punishments in the entire Islamic corpus. All the other ones are go under the category of a judge's discretion. In those 6, all of them should be avoided to the best of one's ability. But the point that it comes to the I mean, they said in 800 years the Ottomans didn't cut off any hands or stone any adulterers because people veiled people's faults. If somebody stole from you, if you forgive them, then they're not punished for it. But if you take it to the authorities, then the authorities are obliged to implement the law. A lot of Muslims don't understand these subtleties about Islamic law.
Sheikh Hamza, the problem is the Taliban were just simply condemned for even attempting to apply.
Well,
Islamic law.
You know, my personal feeling about the thought, I was not there, I didn't see it, and I really felt there was an immense amount of disinformation. It's well known in the West that the first victim or the first casualty of war is the truth. And I wasn't there, I didn't see it, so I really don't like to comment on something that and that is a Islamic principle that you should withhold judgment until you really understand something.
What is problematic for so many people, though, is the interpretation of something like Sharia law. And we were talking about it on the program yesterday, the honour killings of women who've been raped.
Well, honour killings have nothing to do with Islam. Honour killings occur more in one small segment of the Muslim world, and they occur amongst Christians and amongst Muslims.
Sure, but
and they used to occur if we
or they believe.
No, it's not. It's ignorance. There's absolutely no basis for it. It's absolute, complete ignorance. I'll give you an example. There was a time in America, there was a time in Mexico, where people killed their daughters for dishonoring the family. I mean, you know, this is just a type of a primitive understanding about the world that exists in many, many places, and it has nothing to do with religion. And I think when we conflate religion and culture, when we conflate religion and human behavior, then we're in deep trouble. I mean, I think at the essence of the Islamic tradition, certainly the great world religions, at the essence of these traditions is the concept of mercy. I mean, the Quran begins in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. Killing my daughter because she's dishonored me is certainly, I think, has nothing to do with the concept of mercy.
Sure, but then why isn't more of a challenge made in those states? I mean, let's say in Jordan by
honor killing is condemned. No, honor killing is condemned by all. I've never met anybody in the Muslim world, and I lived in the Arab world for over 10 years. I've never met anybody that has justified that. They've all seen it as something that's wretched. And I think even probably the people that have perpetrated the crime prior to it actually happening to them probably would have seen it as odious. But it becomes, I mean, this is the nature of culture. Cultures are very deep, and they have dark elements. I mean, we have dark elements here. In the United States, we've aborted over 20 million fetuses since Roe versus Wade. There's a lot of people that consider that to be an incredibly barbaric act of genocide, of mass murder. And I know that it's certainly a debatable point in the secular societies, but there are many. The Catholics view that as one of the great crimes against humanity, and yet it seems to be an acceptable normative practice.
We will pick this up after the news, sport and the weather. It's 0500 909 693. Here is John Ketley.
And I keep looking in envy at the weather in Port Elizabeth, where it's gloriously sunny. A bit crofty wishes were there. 28 degrees, nice.
As the only member of the BBC Sports Department that's not, yes, I'd like to join my colleagues, but there you go.
Somebody's got to, fly the flag back home, haven't they? But anyway, I think it's going to be a very close finish, David, that game. I think there's plenty of life in that one yet. Now, we've got a line of discontinuity down the middle of the country. For example, it's 6 degrees in Cornwall with some sunshine. It's 6 degrees also in the Isle of Man without sunshine. But it's just 2 in Bristol and 2 in Manchester. It's getting colder from the east. Now, with this colder weather, we are seeing at the line of discontinuity some drizzly rain and some sleet too for the Cotswolds. Still moving southwestwards across South Wales and southwest England during the rest of today and for a time tonight as well. Now, as it keeps turning colder, it is turning brighter. It's turning much sunnier now in parts of Lincolnshire and East Anglia and Kent. And this sunnier weather will keep on moving into central parts this afternoon and other parts of the southeast as well. So it does set us up for a frosty night tonight. Temperatures down to -4 or so, a hard frost to come in quite a number of parts of the country. Whereas further west and north, more drizzle to come in southern and eastern Scotland. Northern Ireland hanging out to some mist and fog as well, especially for the first part of the afternoon, but some weak sunshine amongst. Tonight, there could be a little bit of rain and drizzle coming into western parts of the province and the Outer Hebrides. Here, frost-free, but otherwise from frost for other parts of Scotland tonight.
Live news, live sport. This is 5 Live.
It's 11:33, 5 Live News with Alex Derbyshire.
Iraq's Deputy Prime Minister Tariq Aziz has denied suggestions that Baghdad has missiles which breach UN resolutions. The Chief Weapons Inspector, Hans Blix, is expected to tell the Security Council tomorrow that Iraq's developed a weapon with the potential to exceed the UN limit of 115 kilometres. The anti-terrorist operation around the UK's airports is continuing in response to threats of a terrorist attack. The Home Secretary, David Blunkett, will make a common statement on airport security this afternoon. The Foreign Secretary, Jack Straw, will also make a statement on Iraq. Detectives investigating the murder of 19-year-old Marsha McDonnell, who died from 3 massive blows to the head, have confirmed that they're investigating a similar incident that took place in January. A 17-year-old girl suffered head injuries after a suspected attack in the Strawberry Hill area of southwest London. French media reports say a Spanish man charged with killing the British schoolgirl Caroline Dickinson 7 years ago has admitted the murder. 13-year-old Caroline was staying at a youth hostel on a school trip in Brittany when she was raped and killed by an intruder as she lay in bed. And 3 students from an agricultural college in Shropshire have been killed in a road crash. 3 other men were badly injured in the accident, which happened near the entrance to Harper Adams University College near Newport last night.
Thank you. Here's David Croft with all the sport.
A flurry of runs, as John Ketley mentioned at the end of their innings from New Zealand in their World Cup match against the West Indies in Port Elizabeth. Simon Mann has all the details.
They finished on 241 for 7 from their 50 overs. That was a good effort from New Zealand after being 147 for 6 in the 33rd. They got there thanks to a sensible innings from wicketkeeper Brendan McCullum, who was 36 not out, and some belligerence from Andre Adams, who finished 35 not out, and he got those runs from 24 balls with 2 sixes and a 4. New Zealand struggled early on. Stephen Fleming 25, Vittori 13, Styris 5. They were 66 for 3. Then a good stand between Astle and Cairns, but then both went in quick succession. Astle was caught behind, although I don't think he hit it off Hines, and Cairns went to long off, also off Hines, who finished with 3 for 35. So West Indies need 242 to win.
Very interesting. See how it works out. England's cricketers should have been in Harare today playing their opening World Cup match against Zimbabwe.